Hello and welcome. My name is Avril Hepner, and today BSL Blether's topic for discussion is why do deaf people like to travel? Now, why did we pick this as a subject? Because it's in the summer, people may be on holiday, maybe traveling. So, we have invited three special people to come here tonight to talk about their own travels. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting conversation looking at each of their different experiences. Now, for you, our audience at home that are watching, maybe want to ask a question, then you know what to do. Just put your questions in the comments box and I'll do my best to get through them. And then I can ask our guests on your behalf. Okay? So now I'm so delighted to start this conversation about travel and about their experience. And I hope you enjoy it with our first guest. And our first guest is Tyrone.
Hello. Hi. Hello. How are you?
Could you introduce yourself, Tyrone? Just your name, where you're from.
Hi, my name is Tyron Woolfe. I work at University College London. I'm a researcher, and I've recently had the most amazing opportunity to travel through South America. This is a sign that we use now for South America. So I went in 2018 for 18 months. I've also traveled
Wow.
in other parts of the world as well.
Oh, I will be picking your brains later. Thank you so much
Sure
for
thing.
joining us tonight. Now, our second guest is Diane. Diane. Hello, Diane.
Hello. Hello. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
So could you do the same? Could you introduce yourself? Tell us a wee bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah, my name is Diane Rodriguez. I'm originally from the Philippines. That's where I was born, but I moved to Australia and grew up there. I began my travels when I was around about 22, backpacking. Um, but I've lived here in England for yeah, it's 18 years now, and I have children as well. So, that's me.
Wow. Now, this will be interesting because you'll be able to tell us what it's like traveling with children. So, the audience
Yeah,
will
of
have
course.
to wait till ask you later. And last, but certainly not least, Helga. Hello there. So, my name's Helga, and I'm from Glasgow, right here in Scotland. So, I've travelled for many years now, I think 30 years in total. I started traveling when I was about 19, something about that. And okay, thank
Okay,
you for that
you've
wee bit
all
of
had
briefing.
very different experiences. And I'm wondering why or what was your instigation? What was your motivation to begin traveling? Let's ask you, Diane, first. Why did you get into traveling?
Really, I was influenced from my family. My family used to travel, around Asia and America and things like
Okay.
that. So I grew up seeing that. And my mum would go to Japan a lot. I was small there, and in the Philippines, mum, we were living in the Philippines then, and she would go over to Japan. So I noticed family traveling a lot. But then when I was living in Australia, two Finnish deaf people had came to Australia, and they then really pushed me on to start thinking about traveling myself.
That's interesting. Tyrone, where did your inspiration come from? Well, it started really, oh, goodness me, by accident, I suppose. I took a job uh, and I was shocked to find that it didn't start until 6 months later. I'd already quit my previous job and I had this kind of 6 months gap. And someone said to me, well, go traveling. And I thought, yeah. I remember my glasses had broken
What
after
age
a
were
night
you?
out or something. Oh,
Do you remember?
no, sorry, I can't remember. But I remember this thing about my glasses. My nephew had just been born, my first nephew. And I thought, you know, I could stay and change nappies, or I could have lots of stories to tell him. So that was it. I just decided I would book, and I had the most marvelous time. I was traveling around Asia actually, and my tour leader was in fact one Helga McGilp. Um, so I remember we went to Thailand and various
In
places.
Bangkok as well, I think.
I got sent, I got sent a map with all of these kind of destinations on. I mean, we're back in the day before mobile phone, apps and things. So I had this laminated map that showed you where you would arrive and where you'd travel. And so it was thanks to Helga.
Helga, what about you? What got you interested in traveling? Well, I've always liked to travel. Uh, it's not a like or a love for me, it's an addiction. I genuinely believe that. I prefer to go somewhere that's actually difficult to get to, or that you've been advised is not the safest place to go to. I started traveling probably, well, when I was growing up, I came from a deaf family. My mother and father were deaf, and I had four sisters who were deaf. So there's seven of us in total. So it meant growing up, going on holidays, we couldn't go abroad. We couldn't afford that for seven people. So our usual holiday would be camping, around Scotland. So I suppose that was my first time going abroad. I would maybe 90, 91, and that was Morocco, and that was a family holiday. I can remember the first time getting a culture shock. Is now I've travelled so much, I don't get that culture shock. It's a very rare, but Morocco at that time, it definitely was a shock to my system, just from the plane landing and the extreme heat, the smells, and just everything. The markets, the souk and things like that. I was absolutely shocked how they did things. I would have loved to have stayed there. Well, I remember when we stayed there the first night with the family, we went straight away to a wedding, and it was a proper Moroccan wedding. And I think it was one of their family, the boy there was having a party, and
For his circumcision.
yeah, and that was a shock to me, just so that that was part of their religion and culture. And then I was at the World Games Olympics, and I was playing for GB tennis. And then at that time, I get the opportunity to meet lots of people internationally and introduced to international sign too. So that's how I get into it.
So the Olympics was a sport thing. Diane and Tyron, I wonder if you'd been involved in the sport. We could maybe come to that later, but I want to talk to you about the first country you visited and why you went. And also I wanted to ask you about your experiences of traveling and whether you have you still have any dream destinations that you're holding out for. Tyron? Oh, definitely. I just found a clip this morning, actually. I should have sent it to you, of me standing in Bolivia. And there are famous salt flats there, famous plains, and you have to walk for miles and miles to get there. And honestly, all you can see for miles is just these white salt plains, these salt flats. And I remember watching a program like 5 years ago and thinking, I have to go and see that, but thinking, oh, it's so impossible, it's too far. I couldn't go just for 2 weeks because it's really difficult to get there. And then when the opportunity came, I was
Hmm.
minded of the fact that I'd seen this television program. So that was my dream. But I thought I would go to kind of Mexico and Peru and whatever. But my dream was to get to these salt plains and standing there in Bolivia, surrounded by that white. I found the video clip this morning of me standing there, beaming from ear to ear. Like I can't describe the feeling. It wasn't a luxury. It was just like unique.
Yeah.
Um, there's nowhere else like that. There are flamingos, thousands and thousands of pink flamingos on the horizon
Wow.
against this white. Oh, it was just fabulous. It was fabulous.
So that's your dream. That was your dream, Bolivia. Diane, what about you? What was your dream? And where have you travelled? So is
Well,
it
I came from a hearing family, and I was the only deaf person. So, um, obviously, I'm a very visual, and I was born in the Philippines, so kind of third world. And when I moved to Australia, it's like I didn't really know anything. I was only 5. I was kind of, absorbing visual memories, and then I began to meet people with different ethnicities and see things from different perspectives. And when I went to high school and I was a bit older, I started to learn about different religions and understand those kinds of perspectives. And then when I finally left school, the Deaf Olympics was like, oh, wow, all these people coming and
Yeah.
signing all of these different sign languages.
So that was your dream?
Yeah, well, from that, because I'd met all these people, I was like, okay, I am now
Ah,
going to go to Europe. So Australia to Europe was my real dream. I was kind of so determined I was going to do it. I was in a relationship, it broke up, and after that, I was like, yeah, this is it. Bang, 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 I'm going. I told my mum I'm leaving for Europe. This is it. She was so shocked. But I just kind of planned everything myself, saved the money. I was 22, and that was me with my backpack, and I was off, gone. So I went to
Germany?
Germany first, yeah, because the plane kind of landed there. But it was only kind of in transit, but just even getting out, the air was different. And then we flew immediately from there to Finland. So Finland was my first European country, yeah.
Wow.
And then Europe from there.
That's so interesting. Europe for us is nothing, but from Australia it is really far. Helga, what about you? What would be your dream place? Well, do you know what, Avril? I'm thinking about it. I've been watching a lot of TV. I've been watching Michael Palin and his travels, and I want to do what he does. And I suppose my dream country well, 20 years ago, my dream country to go to was Tibet. There you are, a book about Tibet. That was. Oh, can you bring it closer to the screen? Ah, there we have it. Great stuff. So I went there twice. I've been there 2003 and 2006. It's the most beautiful country. There's a Buddhist monastery there. It's so beautiful. I never expected to see Michael Palin doing that. So really, he's my role model. When I seen him doing that, it made me dream I wanted to go to Tibet. And so with Michael Palin being there, and I was watching this really recently, the BBC were talking about the Himalayas, and that was my dream. And but also my second dream is like to actually meet Michael Palin, two in one. I mean, it's like Tyrone this morning finding things. This morning I was looking through things as well, and I found this. Look at this. This is my picture, and I met him. Me and Michael Palin. That was like my first love, Michael Palin. And this is one of his books. And if I get to the right page, I'll be able to show you. Here we go. And there it is, the
Has he
Himalaya.
signed it?
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So
That's very
Tibet was
personal.
originally my dream one, and obviously meeting Michael Palin.
Fantastic. So we've talked about your dreams, which you've all achieved, but very quickly, I'd just like to show some little clips. So first, maybe Tyrone, let's have a look at something from your travels. Let's have a look. Something from you.
Wow. Lovely to see those different photographs. Tyrone, could you just tell us a wee bit more about each of those photographs?
Okay, well, the first photograph was obviously the salt flats that I've already mentioned. The one with me on the back of the motorbike riding pillion, this is my favorite story, actually. I tell it again and again, but it really was unexpected. I was told a taxi would be picking me up, but there was no traffic coming. I mean, there were 6 motorbikes, and all kind of saying to me, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" That the road was really kind of obscure that I was traveling on. I had a big suitcase. Um, I would advise you never to travel with a suitcase, but that's another story. But I was thinking I couldn't get this suitcase on a motorbike. And they're like, yeah, of course you can, you know. So they put it on the bike. They strapped it on with these rubber straps. And then they were like, yeah, just, you know, tapping it on. I was like, oh my goodness, why not? So I just got on the bike. It was a 2-hour journey on the back of this bike. The colors, through the jungle, the parrots in the trees. It was just fantastic. When it finished, I was so disappointed. I was gutted. So that's that photograph. Oh, and the other one was a scream in Bolivia. That's the world's most dangerous road for buses, not for bikes, but for buses. Because they go off the edge of the road and you can see them lying, you know, old wrecks lying. Bicycles, of course, you know, fine. Of course, I did come off my bike, grazed all my arm, loads of blood for about 2 months. That was pretty grim. But and the other photo is, oh yeah, the school in Mexico. That was also unexpected. I arrived to stay at a family home. They visited school. We were going to visit a school, and they said, "There you are. There's your bed." I was like, "Okay." I was FaceTiming my niece, saying, "Look, I'm in the classroom. It's a primary school classroom." My niece was crying with laughter. I'm like, you know, that. Thank you, really. You know, they're looking after me. These people have left this classroom, so. You know, they're really looking after me. They're inviting me into their lives, into their homes, into their culture. I mean, you know, no, absolutely fantastic. You know, I wouldn't stay in a hotel because this is just such an amazing experience compared to that. So I stayed at family homes, I stayed at youth hostels, but my poor parents were absolutely terrified of sending them all these photos. And Mexico in the first week, I took a photo of me sleeping in a 12-bed hostel room. And my parents were emailed me. I didn't know that they were emailing me. And I woke up in the morning to find all of these messages that they'd been so concerned about me all through the night that there are 12 people sleeping in this room. They could have stolen my things. They could have, you know, all these anxieties. And there are, of course, risks. There are always risks when you travel, but you work out things. You know, you keep your valuables on you when you go to bed and that kind of thing. And as you travel more, you build up more of these kind of techniques, but you also build up more trust in others.
That's absolutely amazing. Could you tell me a bit more, Tyrone, about your book? We got a wee flash of it earlier.
Okay, so
Lovely.
here's my book.
So why did you write it?
Well, I don't want to turn this into a free promo. I haven't written the book for any profit or anything. I'm not particularly interested in profit, but I want people to understand that deaf people can do this. You know, you can.
Yeah.
At that time, I was 42. I was like, I'm going to leave my house. I sold my car. I sold my computer. I just booked a one-way ticket to South America. No idea when I was going to come back. And every day something was different. I met the most fantastic people who let me into their lives. And it's not like a project when you travel and you just see things. And my hobby is writing anyway. But these people that I met, I kept asking their permission to be included in the book, and so all these kind of blurbs for that in the end they kind of turned into a book, and I had 7,500 photos. So the book was published a couple of months ago, and I'd like to thank my family for their support in that. There you go. Helga's got a coffee. Thanks. Helga was one of the first people I told when I published the book, because she was such a big influence on my urge to travel. Have I signed that for you, Helga?
Not yet. Not yet.
I definitely
I'm waiting.
I will. But people who, I've spoken to and given me feedback have said that they felt they're traveling with me when they read the book, and that's really touched me. So I haven't done it for profit. I've done it because I want people to feel like, your life's not over when you're 40 or whatever age. Actually, you can just do it. If you want to just go and do it.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Wow. Oh, thank you so much for that. That was lovely. Just getting a wee taste of your journey of traveling. But how long did it take you to write the book?
3.5 years. 3.5 years.
Ah,
Where to start with that? it was a mixture of thinking, oh, nobody's going to read it, plus this kind of, oh, this is too much information. How do I structure this correctly? And you're trying to make it interesting, trying not to make it too braggy, you know. I mean, some people I've met,
That's true.
I've never been out of the country, so I wanted to write about, you know, things that, some people that I met over there had never been out of their country. So there's this kind of moral dilemma as well about writing about them. But I also wanted to kind of introduce people to this big world that we live in. So it was difficult to decide what to drop, what to cut, the design of the cover and everything. And to follow that gut feeling of knowing when it's ready, big
Oh,
thing for
thank
me.
you so much for that. Diane, could you show us some of your photos? Oh, they're fabulous. So, Dan, did you travel yourself or did you have your children with you? Can you explain?
Okay, so in that first photo, when I was in Jordan, I was in a place called Petra, and I was with my friends there, with my pals, and my partner, and so on. We traveled together. I think we'd been there maybe 1 or 2 weeks, can't remember. Um, it was absolutely beautiful. And then New York, I was with a good friend, so we went together. And we do it. That's a friend that I regularly travel with. And then the third one, Santorini in Greece. That was with my daughter, who was 16, just left school, and I thought I'd treat her, and we chose Greece. Um, Before that, we were thinking about Egypt, but I don't know. We decided we'd pick Greece. My daughter wanted that one, so it's a really relaxed kind of part of the world. We didn't want to do lots of really busy traveling. Greece is just really laid back. It's a place where you can switch your mind off. It's a really different experience for me. It was really nice.
Did When you were traveling yourself, did you ever take your children with us? Can you tell us about that?
Sure, sure. Really, that started, well, like I say, I was 22 when I started traveling. And then I accidentally became pregnant. And life, I didn't want life to stop me, so I gave birth. I gave birth in Australia. Um, and then I thought, when my little one was 4 months old, I thought, do you know what? I'll just travel with the baby, 4.5-month-old baby. And we started again in Germany and then Finland. I've got a bit of a pattern here, passing that on to my daughter. Um, and then we came to England. That was my first time in England. And then with my second and third children, I also travel when they're about 4 months old. As long as they've got their injections and their inoculations, they're old enough to have their inoculations, and I'm happy to travel. And we don't travel luxury; we travel kind of, poor, doing the back, cheap route. As long as you're prepared and you know what to do. I was breastfeeding, so I didn't have to take bottles and all of that luggage or anything like that. And it felt kind of bonding and actually really, really easy. I believe it can be easy to just do those things. You just get on with it. Um, we traveled around feeding the baby. I say to my kids, do you remember you've been to these places and been to these places? And actually, my children do have memories of these places, and that to me is beautiful.
Oh, that was so interesting hearing about your stories, and it's great seeing that for deaf people out there, there's nothing to stop anybody, regardless of your age or your personal circumstances. You can go traveling. So, Helga, if we've got some photographs of you to show, let's have a wee look. I know you've shown us your Michael Palin photograph and things like that, but could you tell us a wee bit more about these photographs? Okay, so just to go back to what Tyrone was talking about earlier on, you mentioned about, 40, you went to South America to travel for 8 months. Do you know, it's interesting. When I originally started wanting to travel, I was 13, it was for 3 months, and I would highly recommend it to everybody. It's worth it. I look back and it's 20 years ago, and I travelled, and that experience is so worth it. So if anybody out there is thinking about travelling, and thinking, well, do you know what? I'll wait till later on in life. Grab the opportunity as soon as you can. Some people say they'll put it off to retirement, but as Diana is saying, she's got children. It doesn't matter. You don't have to wait till the children grow up and they're 18 and go. You can take them when they're young. It's a great opportunity for children to learn about the world they live in.
Absolutely.
So anyway,
Tell
sorry,
us
I've a
about your
bit.
photos. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said, I started about 30, and I used to always love going on the train. So I went on that, the Trans-Siberian train, and I went. Oh, can you
And
put it a wee bit
sorry, could you?
closer?
Yeah.
So I did the train, and also you see the photograph of Syria. There was another
Syria.
photo,
That's Syria. Yeah.
yeah, and there's the other photograph in Ukraine. Unfortunately, when I went to Syria, it was 2009. That photograph, I'd visited a tiny wee town. It was called Raqqa. That's it there. That's the sign. It was just sort of north of Syria, near Aleppo, or just sorry to the right of Aleppo. And I remember there was lots of people were quite nervous, and they took me to a mosque. So we went into the mosque, and it was utterly beautiful, really lovely. So we had a wee look around the mosque. Then we got in the car, and they were a bit nervous when they were driving. I could pick up on this. And this town seemed to be deserted. Everything seemed closed. But when we got back home, then we realised there was the war in Syria, so they must have realised there was tensions then. So in a way, I kind of think I'm lucky I went there before anything happened, before the war, and it's exactly the same as Ukraine. So I visited Ukraine, and it's one of the most beautiful countries. It's rich, and the deaf people there have got hearts of gold. They really made me and my partner just feel so special. They have a Ukrainian Deaf Association, which I showed you in the photograph, and the president was there, and I met the president, and they explained all about what they were about. And they said that they wanted to arrange where we were going to stay, and we wanted to go to Kiev and then live. And then obviously we were trying to sort of find out information, and we ended up staying in a factory, so that the deaf Ukrainian president or the vice president, I can't remember, he or she went with us, and the three of us went onto this train overnight. We got there, and we looked around the factory, and this factory had deaf people working there. There was maybe about 200 or 300 of them, and they said, "Look, you can stay there overnight in the factory." And it honestly, the only way I could describe it is their hospitality is above and beyond. I'm sure Tyrone and Dan, you've had similar experiences in other
Yeah.
countries. It's just amazing, and it's
Yeah.
lovely to meet other deaf people and go to schools and meet local people and just introduce yourself, and you go into their house and you just have this conversation. It's
Yeah.
it's just so beautiful. And sometimes it can be quite difficult because you feel, I've got this British passport and I've got all of these things, and you feel that they don't have it and they don't have the same opportunities, and also they don't have the opportunity to travel in the same way as I
That's
have
right.
because of my passport.
That's right. I just wanted to come back to Helga there when you're talking about them looking after us in their country. In my book, in the last chapter, I wrote about how it had changed me. I remember earlier, if I'd been in the pub and I'd say to someone, "Where are you from?" and they'd say, they'd tell me, and I go, "Oh, okay, whatever." But when I came back from my travels, I think my life has changed. I'm much more welcoming to people who are, for visitors. I say, don't stay at hotels. Come on, and I try and extend that hospitality that I experienced. I think it changed my attitude, because I think I'm so embarrassed when I look back at how standoffish I might have been, rather than being so really welcoming of people to our country. And I think it's really changed me.
Totally agree. Oh my goodness, that was so interesting seeing your photographs, hearing about your stories as well and your own experiences. So I've just had a wee eye on the comments box and we've got questions coming in. So bear with me till I get the first question. And it's from Shazad. And the question is, when you go and travel, is it mostly for a holiday or is it a business trip? Or maybe a mixture of both. So we'll ask each one of you.
Well, I think, oh, sorry.
Okay, for me, it's not a business trip. It's always linked to sort of a holiday. My time backpacking, when I'd left Australia and my goal was I was going to be 2 years traveling, but I ended up getting pregnant, accidentally. So that's why it was split to a year. But I still was determined to get my traveling finished with my baby, being pregnant and with the baby. I just think it's the memories of everything that you've been to, backpacking. It's not a luxury holiday. But you're absorbing everything that you see and around you, and it's just an amazing experience.
Helga, what about you? Do you travel most for holiday or for work, or?
Yeah, I'm mostly a backpacker, but I have to admit, the first time I actually got a trolley. I think I'm getting
Yeah,
old now. Yeah.
me too.
But for me, I think I've only been in business once, and that was to Albania for 1 month. And I think it was the Deaf Association, and I went there to do some training, and it was training their staff to set up a volunteer
And that
rota.
was Albania. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's near Greece, and so anyway,
Ex-Yugoslavia. Yeah,
yeah, I
okay.
was there
Yeah.
for a while, and then they. Wait, I'm trying to remember their signs for it. That's a sign. Their sign for volunteer is a picture of a heart. So I thought that was interesting. I stayed there for 1 month training them, and I think at that time we got funding from it was the Finnish Deaf Association. I mean, the Finnish Deaf Association, same as Denmark and Norway and all of that, they have a lot of project funding available for anybody in the world to set up projects. We don't have that kind of thing as much in Britain, but the Scandinavian countries really have that well and truly set up. But yeah, but I think yeah, I'm on holiday, just the one time for work. And you, Tyrone, what about you? Work, business, holiday?
Well, similar, but mostly volunteering, really, in Bolivia and in India as well. I've done some of that. My problem with my experience of volunteering is that it's often not well structured. We'll just do what you do in the UK, and you think, well, what is that? If it's properly structured, it's worth doing. Um, but my Spanish is very limited. So I'm there teaching young people, thinking, language is always already a barrier, my language, not theirs. So I wrote about in the book, like, why are you asking me to volunteer if you're not clear about what you want me to do? Give me some clear guidance. And I think there are ethical considerations to do with volunteering as well.
Yeah,
So I was left with doubts about that. I like volunteering. I'd love to do like a year's volunteering or something, but I'd really want to look for an appropriate opportunity. Yeah.
yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm the same with Albania. I remember when I was teaching international sign and I was using PowerPoint and I was having to use English words and I could see they weren't taking in. So I very quickly adapted, You know, they weren't to adapt to me, I had to adapt to them. I was a teacher, so I dropped English and I was looking for Albanian words, just using Google Translate, check with someone else to make sure I've got exactly the right word, and then everything was fine. But you had to create your sort of like lesson plans and things like that. Um,
Hmm.
you know, and you have to be so flexible because you might consider something and it won't suit the target audience.
Yeah. And also, when I wrote in the book about volunteering with young people in Bolivia, 300. And when I got there, there were kind of 20 young people and the rest were old people. And I was thinking, what am I doing here? Maybe I had a very English attitude about how this should be structured. Oh, okay, we're still there. Yeah, how this should be structured. And I realized perhaps I have to change my attitude and become more flexible. Sorry, my screen seems to be moving around. Is everything okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I just wanted to agree with Helga there that you really have to adopt this approach of being much more flexible. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I think that's why I liked your book title, The Unexpected, because I think that's important because, you know, sometimes people go on holiday and they have a tick list
Yeah,
or they have a
criteria. Yeah,
absolutely, but I think when you're traveling, you have to be prepared for the unexpected too, and you need to have that flexibility.
yeah, I agree. I mean, when I decide to go somewhere, it's almost like I just click on a map and I go there. It just has to be somewhere that I've never been. Um, I'm not a good planner. I'm very spontaneous. I tend to just kind of go, wow, I'm just going to do stuff, and I do it. And that's how I do it. I never plan, honestly, cross my heart. I'm a terrible planner. Yeah, the unexpected. It's like, on Christmas Day, I was in Colombia and I thought everyone would sit down and they'd have a Christmas dinner. We'd pull crackers, we'd wear paper hats. And when I got there, it was a friend's house. It was really nice. His deaf family had invited me to their house. And they brought out these big pans and they made chapatis and then we got some meat and put them in the chapatis. And I thought, oh, this is a starter. So I bet I hadn't eaten too much. I ate 4 or 5 and I was thinking, oh, I need to, I shouldn't really eat too much because, we're going to have dinner, right? And they were like, dinner. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I suddenly realized this was Christmas dinner. So I come expecting it to be exactly what I was used to. And I was like, oh no, I was so gutted, honestly. I was really expecting a massive roast and everything, but no.
Well, we have another question coming in for from one of our audience. It's Erin McCluskey, and Erin's question is: what's your recommendations to the deaf young people out there wanting to backpack? Any tips based on your own experience? How do you plan your backpacking itinerary, Diane?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day when I was young, 18 years ago or something, when I was 22, when I was 22 years old, I would advise people firstly, just to go, just go. Um, I'm not sure that colleges and certificates and all the rest of it are more important than travel. I think it is life-changing. It will change your life big time. And then you can carry on. It doesn't stop you doing all the other things, but it gives you something to look back on these amazing experiences. Like, I've been doing it for 20 years. And when I look back, that time has flown really quickly. So I think, as a young single person before I became a mother, it was a very different experience backpacking then. And I really appreciate that now. And I would encourage young people now to just go get those experiences. Catch your dream. Go for it.
Oh, lovely. What about you, Helga?
Helga.
Have you got anything for young people? Whoa, Tyrone, you go first then.
Well, I do. I would say look after yourself, though. Don't be foolish. Check when you arrive. Check what the British Foreign Consulate advises in terms of travel in that area. Make sure
Actually,
it's okay. The
Tyrone, could you go
FCO,
back
the Foreign
again?
and Commonwealth Office, Foreign and Commonwealth Office,
Okay, got
they
you.
give advice on safe travel, where it's safe to travel to, where it's not. So look on their website, and if it's not safe, then your insurance will not cover you. So be aware of that, be mindful. But on the other hand, yeah, take a little risk, go enjoy yourself. I'm a bit of a risk taker. I know that, other people find that really annoying about me, but and also I'm a man, I'm a white man traveling, so I have those privileges. But if you're female, maybe Helga, and you might have some more thoughts about that, about how to be safe. But observe curfew times locally. I was in El Salvador, for example, and you had to be back in your accommodation before 9 o'clock at evening because it was not safe after that. So obey those rules. Don't ignore them.
Yeah.
Follow the safety guidelines.
Great. So what was it again? You were saying home, the curfew?
No, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the FCO. Yeah.
Oh, right, got you now. Helga, what were your tips? Yeah, just to repeating it, it's the FCO. They'll show you a map. Like for example, you could click on Iran, and if it's green, it's safe. If it's yellow, it's if it's essential, you can go, and if it's red, then it's saying like, it's dangerous to go. And if you ignored that, um, you won't get travel insurance, as Tyrone had mentioned, because the government has said this is not a safe place to travel. But I do agree with Tyrone. Travel insurance is so important, and I know you're always
Absolutely.
trying to reduce your costs, but it is so important. And also for your safety, especially if you're a female. This is the world we live in. Like for example, if you're on a train, like the train I was on, the Trans-Siberian Railway. So you were going through Russia, China, and you have a kind of like a cubicle to yourself. And sometimes through the night, someone would try and open the door. It could be staff, or it could be another traveller. So, you start to sort of think you've got other travellers next door, and they would check because they would say, "You all right?" Because they noticed that I was deaf and on my own. Um, but when the train door shut, what I used to do, I would put my feet up against the door so that if someone even attempted to come in, I was going to feel that vibration in my legs. So it's just wee extra things to think about if you're deaf and you're alone on a train. I have a whistle so that if anybody does come in, I just use that whistle. So I maybe put it on my belt, and if anyone comes in, I just pull that whistle, and that gives them a fright.
Did you have to use the whistle at all?
Fortunately, not yet. But if I was alone, I certainly would use the whistle.
That's a good tip.
I know also the last thing is things about money, making sure that you've got cash and you maybe traveller's checks and split them up. Don't put everything in the one thing. Separate your money.
Absolutely. And could I just add one more tip for young people? Your amazing time is not about how many photographs you take of you partying. Your amazing time is the time you'll have without your phone, the time you'll have looking around you, reading a book, reading their local newspaper. That's one of the things that Helga put. Don't look at the website, look at their local newspaper. Honestly, fascinating stuff. Thank you for that tip, Helga, in turn. But that's where you find it. Fine, take some pictures of you having a party if you like, but that's you having a holiday. That's not you traveling. And sometimes people put on social media, look where I am, guess where I'm traveling. That's fine. But one more tip to share is it's okay to have a low day. That is fine. I've had boring days, sitting on a hammock, reading a book, swinging underneath the trees. That's fine. It doesn't have to be high energy, fantastic all the time. Those quiet times were when I read my book, when I thought about things, when I wrote letters home, when I was just being.
Oh, that's so lovely. Great tips, guys. Making everybody excited about the next trip. So let me just have a wee look at the questions again. We've got Marissa. And the question is, what's your advice for new solo travellers and any recommendations for them? Any places that would maybe, like any buildings or places that might take their breath away? Dan?
Yeah. Well, again, I've travelled extensively solo. But yeah, I mean, as I said before, I don't do lots of planning, but now there's lots of things, mental health, lots of kind of areas where there's war breaking out and things. So people who have solo traveled can give you lots of advice. So speak to them, follow the guidelines, get your inoculations. That's really important. So
Absolutely.
get your vaccinations.
When
And
they're expensive?
insurance. Don't get the cheapest insurance. It's not cheap, but traveling for like a year or something like that, or if you want to go regularly, it's worth getting insurance that will cover a year, so a year's worth of planning, a year's insurance plan. Make sure you've got phone numbers safely stored so that you've got backup if anything happens. I mean, you've got all kinds of Apple tags and all sorts of things now, which means that you're really supported. So I'd recommend those kinds of things. And it's true, please take a photograph of your passport and put it in your email. So if you lose your passport, you can go to any shop or, there's internet and you can get a photograph of your passport. So always do that. It's really useful. And I think that's probably all I have to say anymore. Yeah, really important to keep a photograph of your passport on you as well, because that's happened to me. I've lost my passport. I could tell you more about that. I was with a 4-month-old baby. I had my passport stolen in Italy, in Rome. I was so upset and really panicking. That was the worst panic I think ever. But looking back, I had a way of getting through it. So those processes are really important.
I think for me, if when I go traveling, I go somewhere that's maybe to start with, I would maybe suggest Europe and build up before you go further afield. That might get you the skills because I can remember when I first started, I went to Russia and it really threw me. And I look back, I wonder if I maybe should have done Europe first before I'd taken that big step and going to Russia because it was such a big difference.
Yeah,
However,
but also
sometimes a baptism of fire is the best thing and it builds up your resilience. So, tomato, tomato.
I also remember it's not about, you have to manage your expectations. So when you arrive somewhere, you might feel, a bit crestfallen. That's normal. You need to just continue and work through that. In a couple of days' time, it will be gone, and you'll be kind of motivated. And so don't be disappointed where you go. Yeah, and budget is the other thing. Okay, so wherever you go, I went to Mexico and I really struggled. I was aiming for 50 a day, and that was that, I had this really tight budget and I could have a cup of tea here and I can have a cup of coffee and now I can have a bag of crisps. And it was so stressful. And I thought, I can't do this. And someone said to me, just try and review your budget every 2 weeks or so and think, where am I? How am I doing? And if you've wiped out your budget, go home. We'll still love you. What's the drama? And I thought, yeah, actually. So from then on, I was like, okay, yeah, the budget. And sorry, I've forgotten your sign name, Diane. As Diane was saying, there is a Facebook group called Solo Deaf Travelers.
Oh,
Solo Deaf Travelers. And that's it's quite American, but it's really useful. A lot of people supporting each other. So as you say, you arrive on the first day and you can often lose confidence and think, what am I doing? What have I done? So being part of a group like that can be really helpful.
yeah, that's really useful. Honest to goodness, you have no idea how many questions we've getting in. We're never going to cover them. So I'll pick this one. It's regarding risk and danger. So from Erin, Have any of you gotten into a sort of risky, dangerous situation? Tyrone.
Yeah, I think I'm talking too much. Stop me if I am. But I arrived in a park, and there's a time limit on the bus, and it was 5:30 in the morning. I was kind of, bleary-eyed. I went to get a cup of tea. I was waiting for the place to open about 9 o'clock, and I thought I'd just go. I went into this kind of jungly place. It was fantastic. Honestly, the views were amazing. I was walking through this trail, but it went further and further and further and further. And then suddenly I just kind of came to this ridge, and I thought, if I'd fallen, if I'd twisted my ankle, there is not one person who knows where I am. And I stopped and went back. There was just
Yeah.
this moment though where I kind of woke up to that, because I'm like, oh, this is lovely, this is great. But sometimes you really have to think, who would find me, So yeah.
Great. What about anybody else? What about you, Dan?
Yeah. I'd often kind of do things about thinking about where I was going. In Burma, that was one of the most, I mean, we're talking about back then, there were no tourists, right? And I just got there and wow, I could have been overpowered, especially as a woman, lots of men looking at you, being a solo female traveler. So no cash machines or anything like that. And I hadn't done any research, of course. So, from those kinds of experiences, I think you learn. And I've been a bit more careful since then. So I would advise doing some research.
What about yourself, Helga? I think it was more of a dangerous situation, and it was a book that I'd brought on holiday traveling. What had happened basically was I was on holiday in Vietnam.
Vietnam, is that the sign? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's Vietnam. And anyway, I arrived at the airport and they decided to look through my rucksack and they found this book. And I think it was this one. Right, I'm not sure, but I think it might be this one. And anyway, they were talking about it was the books about the Vietnam War. And the airport were like, why are you bringing a book about the war? And I'm like, no, 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 it's really talking about this guy's journey in a motorbike. But he looked at me really suspiciously. And it made me realize you have to be careful what you pack and what
Mm-hmm.
you bring into someone's country. Like, for example, China. I remember I brought a book and it had some photographs in it of the Dalai Lama.
And can you tell us a bit
Who's
more about the
that?
Dalai Lama? He's
Yeah,
a Buddhist, right? Okay, yeah.
he's a Buddhist. And anyway, that I
You were
forgot all
talking
about
about the,
that.
the
Oh,
book had a photograph. Yeah.
that's right. Sorry. So my book had the Dalai Lama, and any photograph of the Dalai Lama is not allowed in China. So things like that,
Mm.
just be careful. If you've got any books that are talking about the country and their history, particularly of war, be careful and photographs as well.
Yeah, so that would kind of put a break on your travels, right?
Yeah, and also another thing just to tell you about is your passport. Watch where you've been before. Like if you're going to Iran and you've got an Israeli stamp on your passport, they won't let you in. And but if you've been to Iran, it's quite difficult to get a visa to go to America. You have to go to London to get to the American embassy and
Yeah.
ask for a particular visa. And they will ask you, why did you go to Iran? So be aware of that. Certainly, if there's any problems with your passport, I would honestly, and you've got an issue, I would get a new passport to save the
So
hassle.
refresh is the way to do it. Okay, thank you for that. Here's another question then. Oof, goodness. We've got a question from Lisa. Linda.
I wonder who this is. So Linda's
So,
asking, would you travel without your mobile or laptop? Would that be something you consider?
well, back then we did. I'm not sure I would do it now. Because I've got children to think of, and I would want to contact my children. As a mother, I think I would want to stay connected to them. And you've got Apple Tag you can use, and it's fantastic. Everything is kind of dealt with technologically now, so I think you have to take it.
Yeah, when I was
Yeah,
in Asia, the first time I was traveling, I had no phone. There was no phones then, and I had the best time ever. However, but I did miss contacting home and things like that. You had to go to the internet cafe and it was so slow and everything else. But, I think for me, it's
the
just
phone is so important.
yeah,
Yeah, all your
it can do
contacts in there.
everything. Translate photographs, everything. I remember we were on the flats and I was able to take I was taking a photograph and the phone just get grabbed by the wind in the salt flats, and there we were looking for half an hour, and I was in a total state of panic, you know. And 45 minutes later, another van driver that had found, and then it made me realise how much I rely on my phone, and I'm addicted to it. Like, it's so useful. Helga, ugh, I've got nothing else to say. I agree with both of them. I think it's amazing without, but you need it for photographs. I don't take my laptop. I would take an iPad because that's maybe useful at night. Maybe if you're having a wee rest and you maybe want to watch a film in the hotel room, just to sort of wind down before you go to bed. Or maybe you're doing some research for the place you're going to visit tomorrow. Um, but I still try when I'm on holiday to try and avoid doing any sort of electronic stuff. I prefer to try and read a book. You know, I know people go for the Kindle because they're lighter, but I love the old-fashioned smell of a book.
And also, if I've booked somewhere and I've got a 2-day itineraries like Paris or something like that, you know, I will look up people's travel tips, where it's good to go, where it's not good to go. Travel books, a bit more difficult to manage, so I find the phone useful for that. I don't know.
Well, I've got a comment that's an interesting comment, and this is from Sandra David. And she's talking about when she travelled across from Israel to London, she hitchhiked in the 1980s. There was no
Oh,
mobiles,
brilliant,
no
brilliant.
laptops, weekly letters home. Sandra, have you kept all your letters? I wonder. That's amazing. But it's interesting to look how time has changed. You know, now we do it via the internet. So time, would you believe it? Oh, go
I
ahead,
just wanted
Diane.
one more thing. I just wanted to show the audience one last thing because I was thinking about my best memories, of when I was young and what I found valuable and, something that I could never throw away. Here you go. That is one of my prized possessions. It's one of I'm going to leave my children to inherit that because, you know,
So many have you
I've been
got?
to over 50 different countries and I've
Wow.
got stickers on it. I think 52 so far. 52,
Wow.
52, about 52.
Tyrone, how many for you?
I haven't counted, to be honest. I actually hate that. Well, that competition of how many things have you been to have this. I don't play that game, but it's nice to see that object. No, I've no idea. I've no idea.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll get out of you later. Helga, what about yourself? When you asked me the question, I did count. I have to think 66 countries in
Whoa.
average. Most, however, in Europe, I think. I think 44 in Europe. Um, but I totally agree with Tyrone. I don't like this kind of tick list, or it
Yeah,
puts
yeah.
pressure on me. I must get 100 countries before I'm a certain age. It's a different feel about that. It's the
Yeah.
quality, it's the experience rather than the quantity.
I agree. I'm not kind of aiming to be kind of selfish or to show off about it. It's just something that's really precious to me.
Could I say one more thing, Avril? Is just to say when you're traveling, don't forget about your home country. I live in Scotland. It's one of the most beautiful places to go and visit. We've got lots of beautiful beaches in Scotland as well. You know, I tend to do once a year, I would go, or twice a year, I would go to Scotland on holiday, and it's something I would encourage,
Oh,
you know,
thank you for saying that.
and to go to England and Wales and Northern Ireland as well. We've such a rich environment.
Thank you for promoting Scotland, Helga. Thank you for that. Um, but yes, we do often think about traveling abroad, whereas our own country can be beautiful too. There are lots of beautiful places around. We've got loads of questions in, but we've already used up an hour, and maybe we'll extend a little bit because so many people are interested, if that's okay with everyone here. So we do have another question that's coming in. Do you think traveling has helped your own mental health and well-being? Can we look at that as a question?
Oh, big time for me, definitely. Definitely. And the reason for it is quite simple. When I went through a divorce, and plus where my child had had some issues growing up, and you know, traveling gives you a chance to reflect, you know, and you can actually have all of your arguments with your self in your head. You can prepare for it so that you're then, like, if you like, forewarned is forearmed. You've got this thick skin and you build up your resilience. Yeah, it's almost like that you take
That
all
you can
this
leave it
in,
aside.
yeah, work it all out and then just put it to the one side.
So regular traveling, you think, helps your well-being and you come home refreshed. Tyrone? Yeah, some people, I think it's about well-being, but I think it's the same every day. Every day can be quite similar, can't it? You go to work, you travel home, you cook your food, and you think, is that it? And I think problems can kind of, well, they're not necessarily problems, but they can inflate to be much bigger than they are. And when you go somewhere else, you look back and you think, that's not really a problem, is it? And you get a different perspective on what's important. It does make you think about those things. So it does change your perspective on life.
Yeah, I totally agree with having the different perspective. And again, it depends in what sort of stage in your life you're at. When I was at 30, my perspective and my thoughts and how I looked at myself for the future, what direction I thought I was going on, what my career was going, is very different from now that I'm 50. It's like I'm living now for today. I'm living in the moment, but as 30, I found myself trying to plan ahead, as now I don't. So my perspective changed with age too.
Yeah, and one more thing, I think, it's a kind of visual thing. When you're on the plane, you look out of the window and you see that. It's beautiful, to kind of get a sense of the horizon and the earth, and the ground is so far below you, and it's like you've left your problems down there too. It's really beautiful.
Such a beautiful thing. You're absolutely right. My book, I wrote something about from the plane to getting off board into a new country, and I labelled that airport. Or
When you
sorry,
land at the airport, you're a tourist, right? You're kind of arriving in as a tourist in that country. But when you travel from one country to another and you cross a border on a bus, the mountains on one side of the border and the mountains on the other side of the border are exactly the same. So then you kind of think, well, what is a border? So this is what's different to the experience of tourism, where you just step off a plane and you're in that place. Um, you know, Taking a train from Japan to England is something that I'm still considering. I'll let you know if I do it, but I'm interested in that idea.
you can
Maybe,
definitely do it, Tyrone, through Central Asia. I'm telling you, get the train. Do not get the plane. Honestly,
yeah.
grab the opportunity. Get that train. It's beautiful. Now I've asked about your dreams and you've told us about that. Well, now I want to ask you if you got anything left in your bucket list that you want to achieve. I mean, Helga got Tibet, is there something else or some country that's still there that
Yep.
you would definitely want to go
Yep.
to?
Yep.
Who's
Yep.
going to kick off? Helga, you kick off. What would be the country for you? Ooh. Well, I'm going to be 50 this year, so I would love to go to Pakistan. I'd love to go there. I'd like to go to Bhutan as well. Yeah, there are a couple of countries. Oh, also, I would love to follow Tyrone from South America in South America, 'cause I haven't done that yet. So once I finish read your book, not once but twice, I think you're definitely going to influence me, and I think it's going to be South America for me.
Good.
I'm sure I'll be back in contact for lots of advice.
Anytime.
Oh, well, that's what we're here for at Blethers, for everybody to support each other.
I'd like to go
Diane,
to Japan. I'd like to go to Japan, particularly at cherry blossom time in April. 2024. That's my wish. I'd love to do that. Anything could happen, obviously. Go with the unexpected, but fingers crossed.
and Diane, what about yourself? Where would you like to go to?
Like Tyron said, I'd love to go to Japan, but maybe I'd like to go to November. Oh, I was going to say we should go together. No, November, because that's a birthday. So yeah, that I think. And my children have grown up absolutely adoring Hello Kitty. Do you know Hello Kitty? I don't know if you can see. I've got a little tattoo of Hello Kitty there. Yeah. And that is a Japanese phenomenon. That's their thing. So I think Hello Kitty would be good. Yeah. Japan.
Well, as I said, we're way over time, so I think I'll take just one more question. And it's Tammy here. So it's regarding money. What advice would you give us to bring? Credit card, cards, different kind of exchange cards, and some cash?
I think that depends on the FCO advice. Again, look at their advice and see what they're recommending. More and more people are using things like Monzo, but they do take a percentage. But there's much more kind of ease of using contactless payments. So,
And also, I feel safe with my own bank card, but
yeah.
what I would say is have a few, 3 or 4 bank cards, just in case one's got stolen or you've mislaid it and you need to freeze that one, you can use the other one. So that, and maybe some cash, maybe like a £50, keep that hidden away, tucked away, just in case. That's what I would recommend.
Lovely. And same for you, Helga?
Yeah, I usually take 2 credit cards in case one doesn't work, and I have some cash. Um, Usually some dollars and some euros. So I mix and maybe a tiny bit of British money, but mostly euros and dollars. I'll mix the cash because mostly all the countries will accept one or the other.
Yeah, most people take dollars, won't they? In Asia, it's dollars, very definitely. In Europe, it's euros. Yeah. So, yeah.
Mm. And some don't accept credit cards, so that's why make sure you just have that enough cash. Because I can remember in the past, yeah, I
Travelers
was taking,
checks. Oh, I
yeah, it
remember
was all
those. Yeah,
travelers
yeah.
checks. You had to go in hoping that something was open to exchange your money. I was at um, recently Sweden,
And,
and they wouldn't take any cash at all. It was all cards. Everything was contactless. So
are you with Monzo? So you don't get
no,
charged,
not
or
yet. It was just my bank
it's
card, my
worth
bank
getting one
card.
of their cards? Mm.
I'd really would honestly, could I just say to the three of you tonight that could you look at the comments after we finish Blethers, because there's lots of comments there that I'm sure that you could just answer for everyone. I can't believe it. We're now 1 hour and 10 minutes. And so the last platform is over to you guys. Everybody at home's watching. So what would be something you want to say about travel?
You've got one life, one chance. Make a change.
Love that. Like that. Tyrone?
Be ethical. you are arriving as a rich person. Don't just spend all your money in the shops in front of local people. If I'm traveling somewhere, I buy their food. I take time to make sure I'm being ethical in their country.
Thank you, Helga. I would say maybe bring some small gifts that you can
Oh,
give as
like
presents,
what?
just tokens of gestures. Like in Scotland, I would pick up some Scottish things, a key ring, just small
Yeah.
things, something with saltire on it. And that was maybe someone who'd helped me on my way or had done something kind. And it's just lovely to give them a gift. Or maybe something from the BDA. I've done that before. Given them a BDA key ring and things like that, and people have loved it.
So a kind of
Diane,
exchange and respect, I think, an exchange. Be open-minded, be aware. Um, and think about yourself. Be polite, be kind, and behave nicely.
well, this has been the most amazing advice, lots of tips, and look by the judging by the comments, everybody's looking at us at home. So hopefully we're going to have people watching at home. They'll be on here to share their journey. Oh, Tyrone.
Into space, into space.
Yeah, perhaps. Maybe we'll be the first deaf people in space. You never know, the unexpected.
Uh-huh.
Thank you so much for your time. It's time
Thank
to say
you, thank you.
bye-bye and thank you for watching.